What is your feeling about what they do, if anything?
That's a great question. I think, they're not going to have a lot of time to be able to figure it out because of the trade embargo that took place during the Olympics. But I think that everything is still the same for the Bruins as we talked about beforehand. I think one of the things that really benefits them coming out of it is that they are completely healthy. Remember, they headed into the Olympic break without their top two centermen, Elias Lindholm and Pavel Zacha. Both of those guys will be back on the ice. So I think that changes a little bit of the calculus for a guy like Donnie Sweeney. But I don't think that the Bruins are in the rental market as we look ahead to the trade deadline that's going to take place on March 6th. I think if they can add some difference makers, especially in their top six, that's what they'll look to do with some of the assets that they have.
Judd, why did the NHL not have the players in the Olympics every year? I mean, it's just such a sensational couple weeks for the NHL, for the product, for the players. It highlights so much of what makes the league so great.
Well, I think that there's a lot to that. First of all, the National Hockey League has to deal with the International Olympic Committee, which I don't think is very easy. And I think that there were certain demands, whether it came to some expenses and insurance and travel and the ability to use highlights. There's a lot of business aspects that I think that have been involved that maybe would have hampered that. I think in addition to that, remember, and I don't know if we've had this conversation in the past, but you're essentially shutting down your business at one of your biggest times for 3 or 4 weeks. So there's a business aspect to this. Like, how does this impact the bottom line? So I think when it comes to how it impacts the business, how the NHL was able to get things done with the International Olympic Committee and the things that they wanted, I think that really precluded the NHL from going to the games for 12 years.
Judd, one of the things that we've kind of been talking about is, how successful it was for the Olympics and people watching it. Do you think that carries over into, back into the regular season and with the NHL where you start to get some of these fans that might have just tuned in to support their country now say, okay, I want to become a fan of the NHL?
I do. In the same way that, Wiggy, I don't think, how big, how substantial that's going to be. I think that we're going to have to be able to figure that out over a greater period of time. But I think that there were a lot of people and casual fans who may not have tuned in. And I think the final ratings on the Olympics, I think NBC got 18 million people watching, and it probably peaked, somewhere in the mid-20s. There were a lot of casual hockey fans that clearly tuned in, and I'm sure that the National Hockey League was able to latch on to a handful of those that will now either start to watch, follow, or go to games.